What's going on, people? It's your boy, the Boxing Lowdown, here for episode number 87 of the TBL podcast, man. It's crazy, 87 episodes already. But listen, delighted to be joined here by you know who it is, man. My co-host, the main man here in the building. We got a lot to talk about today, man. I can't wait to get this show started. Laurie in the house, man, from AFTV over there in the studio. How is it going, first of all? Let me quickly ask.
What's popping, man? It's a lovely day here in London, in the middle of a bit of a heat wave, which is good, which is nice. But yeah, everything's all good. How about yourself?
Very good, can't complain. Loving the weather. I always love the hot weather, man. I'm definitely a tropical baby. Prefer the hot weather than the cold weather for sure. So yeah, work's been going all right. Been enjoying the boxing. So yeah, let's get it
Like I
on, man.
said to you before, it's strap season, man. Strap season. Although it's
We're
kind
going
of
into a bit of a lull at the moment, I think.
we're gonna go into a bit of a lull, but I mean we can't complain after the recent run of fights we've had. Been some pretty sensational stuff. There's still some good fights coming up. I mean, there's one this week.
Bam
Featuring the young
Rodriguez.
up and,
Yep.
yeah, I'm
Mhm.
looking forward to seeing how he gets on. There's a lot of hype about him, and I think it's justified. And there's some news which I'm sure we're going to talk about as well to get
Yeah.
excited about. So yeah, I think in the boxing landscape, it's all good right now, man. I mean, as I was saying to you a couple of weeks ago, I had some conversation with my UFC MMA friends, and they were trying to say that boxing was dead a few months ago. I don't think it is, man. Not at all. In fact, if anything, it's going for a very, very good run.
I
You know what I
definitely
mean?
have to agree, man. As always, before we get started, man, we gotta give a shout out to everyone that joins the comment. Shout out to everyone, man. Francisco, Harvey, I see you. Our community is we got a great community here. People that come in and share their opinions, man. I love it. And as always, look forward to doing this show. So if you're new here, subscribe to the channel. Hit the like button for all you guys that join. Share the video, subscribe to the channel as usual. All of that good stuff. Big up Francisco says, "Do your thing, brothers." Harvey says here, "Evening, lads." IB is coming in here straight with the smoke already, early. He says here, "I hope you're both well. Beterbiev is a beast." Daryl has been saying it for a while. I have been. Yep, I have. I certainly have been. But he says here, Beterbiev beats Andre Ward in his prime.
Stop
He'll
it,
stop
man.
him. I don't care what anyone says.
Stop it.
I want to get
Stop
your
it.
thoughts. Laurie, let's start off with you.
It's not worth making that comparison. Two different eras. And Andre Ward was a great, great fighter. I think to say stuff like that besmirches Andre
Well,
Ward's name.
we could talk about fantasy fights.
Is it worth it? I mean, there's enough smoke around now. You know what I mean? He's got to take on my boy AY, man. Lions in the camp.
Yeah, but we can fantasize about what you don't think that's a listen. They're both light heavyweight. They both competed there. But Beterbiev, he's a monster. I've been saying it. You've been saying it.
Listen, you cannot devaluate Andre Ward's performances off the back of Beterbiev. Don't get me wrong; it was an excellent, destructive performance. I said to you after the fight that Beterbiev and Inoue are the two most destructive fighters currently in boxing, without a doubt, in my view. And he's a great watch. I like the guy. I like his humility. I like how he carries himself. I love what he does in the ring. But listen, man, Andre Ward's an all-time great, Olympic gold medalist, something that Beterbiev couldn't do. Andre Ward, he won that gold medal, by the way. He stepped up in weight to accommodate other people in that Olympic team, stepped up to light heavyweight, won the light heavyweight gold medal. On the way to winning that gold medal, he defeated a Russian that had been knocking out everybody in the amateurs. And then he went unbeaten as a pro. So people saying, oh, Beterbiev would stop Ward. Stop it, bro. Yeah, that's disrespectful to Andre Ward. Let Andre Ward give him his flowers, let him retire. This is a new era now. This is Beterbiev's era. Beterbiev's proven himself to be a great fighter. Let's talk about the challenges that lay in front of Beterbiev, because there are a few. You know what I mean? He's yet to unify the division. And although I think he's the best light heavyweight in the world, hands down right now, that doesn't mean to say automatically he's going to go on and unify all the belts. So let's wait and see.
Let's go to the comments here. Big up Punch Smollett in the building. He says here, "What up, big dog?" And he's got Ward and he's got a shit sign, so he's definitely there to stir up Laurie. DS is here in the building. Let's have a look here. We got a comment here from IB who responded to what you just said. He said here, "They're hardly generations apart. Ward retired how many years ago? Probably about 4 or 5, maybe. And he says here, Beterbiev beats him. I'm sorry, and he'll make light work of Yarde.
No,
Yarde
but
needs
why?
to stay
Why would
far
you
away
even
from
mention Andre
Beterbiev.
Ward? He's retired. The guy said he's
Yeah, but
retired.
we're allowed to
I
talk
think
about
it's
fight.
disrespectful. I think it's.
Well, we're not allowed to talk about fantasy. We talk about Mayweather and you know who. Like we
I
talk about
don't.
fantasy
You never
fights.
hear me talking about that. He's done. He's retired. It's a waste of time.
You don't talk fantasy fights.
No, have you ever heard me say I want to see Floyd fight Sugar Ray Leonard or anything like that? I've never said that.
It's not disrespectful, is it?
I think it is because the tone I'm picking up is people just. It's almost like you're wanting that to happen so you could say, yeah, he would smash up Ward. You know what I mean? Nah, man, leave that
that
alone.
might be just his opinion.
Well, yeah, okay, that's his opinion, but it's not mine. I'd rather not talk about it. Let's talk about the future. Let's not harp on about hypotheticals and
So
because I could quite easily have said that Ward would have found a way to win. I mean, you're talking about a guy that up until he retired in his 30s, he hadn't lost a fight since he was 14 years old. So who's to say he wouldn't have beaten Beterbiev? Eh? Who's to say that? It's hypothetical. So that's what I'm saying. It's not really worth my time. I just suspect that what you've got there is a bunch of Andre Ward haters who probably so upset that he wasn't beaten.
I don't think so.
Now, hang on. They're so upset that he wasn't beaten while he was fighting that now they're trying to engineer something. Just enjoy Beterbiev now and figure about Andre Ward. Andre Ward he's been retired a few years now. It's not even in the conversation. He's not hinted at coming back. So it doesn't make no sense to me.
I don't think IB is a hater of Ward. He's saying it here. He's not devaluating Ward. He's saying he's a great, but he's just saying Beterbiev, in his opinion, is. And he's just like, I don't know. It's just, listen, man, fantasy fights we talk about fight. People talk about stuff like Ali and Tyson, and they talk about stuff like that. Do you know, it's not, I don't think it's meant to be as a disrespecting. Honestly.
Let's move on. Waste of time.
Let's go to the comments here. Punch Mullet said here, it's funny how only black extremists think he's all-time. He's bored. All right, I'm not going to bother with that. K22 says, Ward obviously is an all-time great, but he can't stop running his mouth and devaluing other fighters.
When's he done that? When's he devalued other fighters?
He works on ESPN now, doesn't he? On the commentary on that team.
Yeah, I think he's a very good commentator. He's not been devaluing fighters. He just gives his honest opinion. Do I agree with everything he says? No, I don't. But then that's what he gets paid for, to give his opinion. And I think as an analyst and as somebody that knows to break down the game and impart that knowledge onto other people, I think he does that very well, actually.
IB also says here, plus how undercooked is Beterbiev? He hardly makes anyone's pound for pound list apart from Daryl's, it seems. This is what I'm saying. Like, Laurie, I know you agreed with me when I rate
Beterbiev highly, and I said a couple of weeks ago on your show that I'd have him in the latter half on my pound for pound. I did say that. So it's
I'm just saying when I said it, like there weren't many, and the pound for pound list has kind of changed quite a bit over the last few weeks, man. There's been some significant wins, and people have been kind of reshaping their pound for pound list for a while. But when I had Beterbiev on mine, I was just saying that I didn't think he got the respect, or maybe not respect, because I know people respect him, but his flowers really compared to other guys out there, and I thought he definitely deserves a spot on there, man. I mean, he's maybe all he does is pray and fight, but listen, the guy can fight. Do you know what I mean? And we saw it last weekend against Joe Smith Jr. Joe Smith Jr., people are going to criticize his game plan. They're going to say he came out to, swing with Beterbiev, but at the end of the day, Joe Smith Jr. was not going to go on the back foot and try and box him, was he? So it's hardly too surprising. I think it was surprising with how quick Beterbiev got Joe Smith Jr. out of there.
But I do think, though, that he did contribute to his own downfall. I think the tactics were poor, to be honest. He showed a lack of tactical nous, and he was made to pay for it very quickly. You just don't go in there and just fight with a reckless abandon when you're fighting against a killer like Beterbiev. It just don't make no sense. And what he was doing there, he wasn't even really trying to close the distance with the jab or anything like that. He was just walking forward and walking straight into punishment. So I must admit, I was a little bit surprised at the tactics. If you know you're up against a guy like that, surely you should be a little bit cautious and, you know what I mean, be defensively responsible, and he wasn't. And he was getting caught with everything. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Maybe he panicked a little bit there when he felt the first couple shots. I don't know, because even when he was hurt and buzzed, you thought he would have, you know what I mean, backed off a little bit, try regain his senses, you know what I mean, try and feel his feet underneath him. He just kept getting back up and going straight back in again for more. And obviously, Beterbiev was more than happy to oblige. So I do think that, you know, listen, I don't think he was going to win anyway, but I was a little, say, disappointed with the tactics from Joe Smith, but I was a little bit surprised at the tactics, or shall I say lack of tactics, because if that was their game plan, then obviously it was very
I think no matter what Joe Smith Jr., it just would have delayed the inevitable, man.
No, but he didn't give himself a chance to win, did he? When you go in there with that sort of
yeah, but you say
you're not
that, but
giving
I
yourself
still
a
think
chance to win. No, but it don't matter. He's not giving yourself a chance. People said, "Oh, he's got a big punch. He's this, he's that."
yeah, but what do you expect him to do? Go on the back foot and box?
You use this, Daryl. You use this. You don't just go in there and say, "I'm going to bang him out," because we all know Beterbiev is a very good boxer. So you're not going to get to him, Joe, by just walking across the ring and letting your hands go. He would have been seeing that. You're talking about a guy
but what he might have thought was Beterbiev is known to be quite a slow starter at times. So I thought, let me jump on.
Yeah, but there's a difference. A slow starter, and then you just serving yourself up to the guy on a plate. You know what I mean? So I don't know what you think, but I think that there was a real lack of tactical nous going on there, man.
So you think it was more down to Joe Smith Jr.'s tactics than Beterbiev?
No, what I'm saying is, listen, I thought Beterbiev was going to win anyway, but I expected Joe Smith to put up a much better fight of it than what he did. And I'm saying that the reason why it wasn't much of a fight is that Joe Smith basically served himself up on a plate for Beterbiev, who was happy to oblige. You know what I mean? And you got to understand this as well. Beterbiev going into that fight would have been, he would have been appreciative. He would have been knowledgeable of the fact that Joe Smith does carry power. So he would have, you know what I mean? He would have been a little bit circumspect. But then if you walk forward and open yourself up like that, you just become a target. So I was quite shocked at the lack of defensive responsibility from Joe Smith, I must admit.
Yeah, like I say, either way for me, it only would have delayed the inevitable, man. I just thought that probably by the mid rounds, I think I had Beterbiev winning by round 6 or 7. But yeah, to end it in the second round, I saw Joe Smith Jr.'s statement after the fight. He put a post out on his Instagram. He might not continue. I mean, he hasn't said that, hasn't confirmed it, but he said he's going to need to take some time away to think about what he wants to do. And he does have a construction business outside of boxing, which is thriving, apparently. He has fought the top 2 at light heavyweight, been beaten convincingly by both. Maybe he might look at it like, you know what, I've reached the pinnacle of what I can achieve. I've been a world champion. I've probably reached my ceiling. There are still fights out there to be made, but how much money would it make? You know, maybe he might be thinking it's a good time for him to retire.
You know what? That might not listen, you know what I mean? I'm not Joe Smith, obviously, and I would never tell these guys what to do or advise them even. But listen, like you said, he was comprehensively beaten and previously been beaten by Bivol, who holds the other belts. So he might be looking at it and thinking, like you said, he's reached his ceiling. He probably, he's overachieved compared to when he started out his career and he was a part-time pro working on a building site. He's made a lot of money at the game. He's won world titles. He's had a good career. He's made a lot of money. And he's, like you said, he's running a successful business outside of boxing. He's got a family and kids. He's probably thinking, you know what, that's me done. And if he was to take that option, then you couldn't really blame him. I think more boxers should adopt that type of attitude. The only problem with that is, of course, is we all know what boxers are like, man. You know what I mean? Give it 6 months and he's at home, putting on a bit of weight, enjoying himself, enjoying his money. He might start getting that itched when he sees other guys getting in there and he's thinking, you know what, I reckon I could beat this guy. You know, because you never know how the landscape will shake up, do you?
No.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll have to wait and see if he really does retire. But if he does retire now, then he would have had a very successful career. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, we'll see what he does. Also in the fight, and Punch Smile, I see your comment there about AJ. We'll talk about that a bit later on. In attendance.
Punch Malik, by the way, he needs to be careful, man. He's going a bit too far with this race stuff. He needs to tone it down a bit. There's a difference between trolling and being a bit of an arsehole. You know what I mean? You need to watch your mouth, bro. Some of that stuff is not really appreciative.
Let's talk about Yarde, who was in attendance there at the fight on Saturday night. He obviously saw the destruction, Beterbiev winning. He's in line for a shot at Beterbiev next. Apparently, that's pretty much done. Bob Arum and Frank Warren pretty much confirmed that. And then Yarde and Tunde were interviewed after the fight. You know, a lot of people on Twitter and everywhere else are going to have their opinion on those two getting it on. I'm pretty much in agreement with the majority. I think it's a terrible fight for Anthony Yarde to take right now. However, as expected, he seemed pretty confident in his interview. He said that, look, he can fight. And he said, I can fight too. You know, let's get it on in London. You know, so fair play to him. I don't want to knock the guy. I don't want to put any, doubts in his head. But if you were to ask me personally how that fight goes, I just think it's a bad fight for Yarde. My reasons why is because the guy hasn't been active. If they do fight in October, it would be 11 months since he's fought. Not only that, as Ash is saying here, his best win is at literally English level. Do you know what I mean? He's got the Commonwealth belt, but he hasn't gone the traditional route for those belts. He's just not on the level of a Beterbiev, and it's actually quite a dangerous fight for Yarde, if you ask me. That's my honest opinion, man. Beterbiev, you saw what he achieved as an amateur. Multiple world championships, was at that level as a pro. He's a unified light heavyweight champion of the world, ranked at number 1. Not just beating guys, he's destroying them and ending careers. He ended the career of Vostik, maybe even Joe Smith Jr. now. You saw what he did to Marcus Brown fighting through that cut. This guy has fought for adversity. He's fought at a much higher level. He's one of the most dangerous guys in boxing that you said. For me, it's poor matchmaking, but he is the mandatory. It looks like they are going to push him into that direction. And let's see. Your thoughts, Laurie?
Yeah, listen, in the immediate aftermath of Beterbiev's absolute annihilation of Joe Smith, and then obviously you take into consideration his other victories. I think it's 18 fights now, 18 wins, 18 KOs. And then you look at someone like Anthony Yarde, who's had a relatively inexperienced career so far. You think to yourself, well, this man's not got a chance. But we all know in boxing, as in life, as in sport, it doesn't always follow what we think is going to happen. So, listen, at the end of the day, as you said, it's a mandatory shot he's got. He wants to fight. He genuinely feels he can win or do a lot better than Joe Smith done. And I think he will do better than Joe Smith, by the way. If you're going to ask me here and now, do I think he's going to win? No. But then, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, no one gave Buster Douglas a chance against Tyson. And I could list a whole load of other fights down the years. People, Lloyd Hannigan, people like that. Nobody gave him a chance. And yet they went over there and did the so-called unthinkable, the unachievable. So we shouldn't write Yarde completely off. But I think it's fair to say he's more than a slight underdog. He's a massive underdog, even fighting at home. I guess you could look at Beterbiev's age, 37, but then on the other side of that, he's not exactly been in any wars, really, has he? You know what I mean? He's not exactly been in any real hard fights. He seemed just laying the smack down on other people. I would have liked to have seen Yarde, though, in a few more meaningful fights before he steps up to that world title level again. I think I was saying to you off camera that I'd have liked to have seen him in a big domestic showdown with someone like Buatsi to establish himself over this side of the water first. Before getting in there again. But it looks like that's not going to happen now. So he has to go in there and do his best. Listen, Yarde can punch, and we know that Beterbiev has been on the floor twice in previous fights. So he's not infallible in that way. He can be put down, but it's whether you can keep him down before he gets you down. You know what I mean? So massive, massive task for Anthony Yarde, man. And I'm slightly biased because I do know the guy. I do like him. I've watched him train. I know Tunde. Same thing with Tunde. I like Tunde, and I like what those guys have done with their careers. But this is a massive, massive task. I can't hide it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Everyone can see it. No one's giving him a chance. No one's giving Joshua a chance. Maybe they can feed off each other and, you know what I mean, pull off the unthinkable.
Yeah. What I was speaking to a couple of people. There was a couple of people that were saying to me, like, "Look, man, you're being too hard on Yard." Like, and I'm not, because it's not like I don't want Yard to win, but if I'm just have to be honest. But like, for me, I just think that it's the people that are giving you are just like Beterbiev is not just a seek and destroy fighter. I think he's kind of proven that now. He's not just a seek and destroy type of fighter. He's somebody that can he can catch and shoot. Do you know what I mean? He can punch.
Two-time Olympian.
He can box. Yeah. He was
Two-time
in the
Olympian,
Olympics,
you know what I
great
mean?
amateur. So he's got a good jab. He's fought under adversity. It's not just the fact he's knocking everybody out. He's got more to his game than that. And yeah, like what concerned me was Yard against Kovalev, for example, in that fight where he did lose, and against Lyndon Arthur. He showed that he has trouble slipping the jab. Do you know what I mean? Beterbiev, he's got a good jab on him. He can jab. So it's not just that. It's the variety of punches that I think will
I would go as far as to say Beterbiev's jab is the equivalent to a lot of people's backhand, their power shot. That's how hard this guy hits. And if you notice, when he fights, he doesn't need to load up. He can just let his hands go. Not with reckless abandon, by the way. It's very calculated what he does. But he lets his hands go because he knows that anything he lands is going to hurt. And that makes a massive difference, even at that level. You know what I mean? There's no pity-pat stuff going on. Everything is thrown with bad intentions, even if he's not loading up. So he's just touching guys, and you can see. I mean, I'm pretty sure you saw it, Darryl. You noticed it, that as soon as Joe Smith felt the power, you could see his face kind of change. You could see it on his face that he was hurt. You know what I mean? And you could see it, man. And yeah, when a guy's got that type of natural power and backs it up with considerable boxing skills as well, and that confidence that he has. I mean, Beterbiev started off that fight on the back foot, which goes to show that what I was saying earlier about he was, I don't know if the word wary is the right word, but he was cognizant, shall we say, of Joe Smith's power. So even he, being Beterbiev, being the favorite, he didn't just walk forward, did he? If you noticed, he was circumspect. He was on the back foot, using the jab, waiting for the openings. And as soon as those openings opened up for him, he took advantage of it. Yeah. And like I said, I don't think Joe Smith was very clever in the fact that he just marched forward, wasn't moving his head, didn't throw the jab enough, and was just there to be taken out, which is what happened to him.
A couple of comments here. Nathan has said the biggest problem with Yard has been the matchmaking that has been poor, and he's had a long layoff going into the next fight. I agree. Asher said here, Yard is a good kid. He's being let down by Frank massively. He needs to be built properly. I guess when he's saying that, you look at the domestic light heavyweight scene, I'm sure Frank Warren, Tunde will disagree with that comment, but, we'd like to have seen Yard in with, some stiffer competition at British level. I guess that's a fair comment. Before you throw him in there, like you're going from 0 to 100 right here. Like you're literally going, and listen, we know he's got ability. We know he's talented. I'm sure a fight with Boaxi right now would probably be a lot more even in people's eyes now than it would have been maybe a year or two ago. Do you know what I mean? So people would have, I don't know, but when you're the mandatory, like, I guess it's there, you're going to take it. Do you know what I mean? But it's a dangerous fight, man. It really is.
Yeah, it is a very dangerous fight. I mean, to be fair to Frank Warren, Tunde and Anthony Yarde have always said they're going down their own path. So, was it them that decided that they didn't want to go down a domestic route? It's probably true that they did that because they've said on many occasions that they're doing their own thing. When they were criticized, they said, look, you could criticize us all you want. We're doing our own thing. We're laying our own foundation. We're following our own path. And they've done that. They got the title shot against Kovalev, put up a very good effort. Nearly had Kovalev out of there. I think it was in the 8th round. Didn't quite get the job done, get it over the line. Suffered that defeat against Lyndon Arthur, which was a let's face it, very disappointing night for him. Lost in what was, let's face it, a pretty lackluster fight. But in the rematch, He looked sensational, Anthony Yarde. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So listen, man, I'm not going to write him off completely because I wouldn't do that. Because this is boxing. We've seen over the years, man, that upsets do happen when they least likely to happen. They do happen. So you know what I mean. If Beterbiev is just going to come over here thinking that he's just going to walk through Yarde and not worry about what's coming back, that would be a mistake on his part. Because say what you want about Yarde, he's a certified big puncher himself. You saw what he done to Lyndon Arthur in that last fight, and that was coming off a loss to him. And he just walked through Lyndon. So, you know what I mean? If Beterbiev had done that to Lyndon, we'd all be saying, wow, look what he done to Lyndon Arthur. Am I right? So you've got to give Yarde some credit for that. But I would agree with you, the lack of experience, the lack of the big fights, the lack of regular competition could be his undoing coming up against a guy like this.
Couple of brothers in the chat here. Big up Bon Kui Kui. Big up, brother. He says here, salute to my fellow European brothers. OG Laurie, salute. Stefan is here in the building. He says here, can Beterbiev stop the rain when it starts to pour?
Can Beterbiev keep the lion in the camp off him?
Nathan has said here, Yarde is going into a second world title fight in his 25th pro fight. So in that sense, they have done a good job in getting him big opportunities, I guess. Another perspective.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was saying earlier. This is what I was alluding to. They said they're going down their own path and they're not worried about the criticism that comes their way, which is why I said you can't really blame Frank Warren wholesale, you know what I mean? Because I would imagine Frank probably presented them with options, you know what I mean, for other domestic fights, and they've chosen to go another way. And they've said that with regularity. Both Anthony Yarde said that and Tunde. I've actually heard them say that. They've got their own reasons for doing so. They're a bit of a mavericks in the game, aren't they? Let's face it. Tunde's definitely a maverick. He's a kind of love him, hate him, Marmite type of figure amongst some fans. But to be fair to Tunde, he's not bothered about that, man. He's still the same guy, isn't it? He's not going to change. So you do have to give those guys credit, man.
Do you think that you know, because this was spoken about before Beterbiev's performance against Joe Smith Jr. and in boxing, you know, they have to say, and you know that well-known cliche, you're only as good as your last fight. But this was in talks before Beterbiev fought Smith Jr. and in previous fights recently, he wasn't as destructive as he has been. Maybe they might have thought at the time, like, look, man, maybe this could be the right time to get him. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden he turns in a performance like that, and people got, you know, they remember how good Beterbiev actually is. So they're looking at like, oh shit, man, you know, like we've just seen him do that. Yarde, man, I wouldn't throw him in there. So it could be a bit of that, maybe, but we'll see. More comments here. Asher said, who has a bigger chance, Yarde against Artur Beterbiev or Joshua? Good question. Or Joshua Buatsi against Dimitri Bivol? I know what Laurie's answer is going to be.
I would say Buatsi against Bivol. Joshua, I mean, on paper anyway. But this is what I'm saying, man. Boxing is, listen, Yarde is a puncher, right? And Beterbiev, despite him being a certified beast, he is 37 years old, which means whatever happens, he's not in his physical prime. He just looks like he is because he's getting these guys out of it. So how do we know that if Yarde can take him 6-7 rounds and then, you know what I mean, start landing some shots of his own, you never know. That might, you know what I mean, that might make some impression on Beterbiev, take him into a whole nother sphere of professional fighting that he's not had to deal with so far in his career. And you don't know how that's going to go. So you can't automatically say just because Beterbiev's wiped out all these other guys that he's going to do the same thing to Yarde, because every fight is different. The fight's going to be in London, which will help Yarde, I think. I mean, his last world title shot, he had to go to Russia in Kovalev's hometown. So at least this time he'll be at home. He'll have his he'll be in his, well, I wouldn't like to say comfort zone, but you know what I'm saying? He'll be where he's familiar with. So those things like that will help him. He'll have support from the crowd.
Joe Smith Jr. was in his backyard. He was in New York.
Yeah, you make a good point. He did. He had all those advantages, and look what Beterbiev did to him. But yeah, listen, it's boxing, man. Listen, I was around, man. I watched that Mike Tyson fight Buster Douglas. Nobody gave Buster Douglas a chance. And look what happened. And Tyson was what Beterbiev is now, and some. You know what I mean? And some. So it is what it is.
Off the canvas, I'll see you, bro. Good seeing you on Sunday, for real, man. Nice to meet you, man. Big up Off the Canvas Boxing. Subscribe to his channel if you haven't already. Stefan has said here, Warren said Dubois still hasn't been paid. Don King, shake my head. Frank and Daniel Dubois deserve that for choosing to deal with Don. Who does that in 2022?
Well, I saw an interview with Daniel Dubois where he was saying he had been paid. So I don't know what's true then. Because why would you go on? I actually saw an interview the other day when they'd asked him, have you been paid? And he said, yeah, everything's been sorted. I'm sure that's what he said. So why say it if it's not true?
One Kuya said here, honestly, I really wouldn't mind if Canelo fought Zerdo. I heard that Zerdo spars with Dimitri Bivol.
Yep, not only does Zerdo spar with Dimitri Bivol, he's actually gone on record as saying that he regularly gets the better of Bivol in sparring. How about Zerdo versus Beterbiev? You know what I mean? That's a good fight. Obviously, you want to see the Bivol fight. But it's whether Bivol will take it. I mean, because this fight's been spoken about for some time now, and yet they've not been able to get it together. And I'm pretty sure it's not Beterbiev who doesn't want it, because he even said, in fact, I think in his post-fight interview, they said, who do you want to fight next? And he said he wanted to unify the belts. He actually said that, didn't he? I don't know if you saw the interview.
Yeah, I did.
When they asked him, what would you like to do? Next, you got Anthony Yarde as your mandatory. He said, I'd like to unify the division. So that sounds pretty affirmative to me.
Let's move on. Let's talk about AJ and Usyk. I'm not sure if you caught the press conference today, but
I saw the stare down, which was quite interesting.
Yeah, we'll get onto that in a minute. But the rematch obviously confirmed. Worst kept secret in boxing. We knew it was going to be announced eventually, August the 20th in Saudi Arabia. Press conference, pretty low key. Didn't really miss too much. But the stare down is what people are talking about. A long stare down between the two, pretty stern. AJ and Usyk. I was wondering who was going to turn first when it gets to that. Eddie Hearn was like, can you both face the front? Neither man did. Then it got to a point where AJ was like, shall we both do it? Usyk was just like, whatever. Then it was like, Usyk moved first, but he didn't move his head. I think AJ might have AJ might have just looked away, the one that looked away out of the two. But I don't read too much into it. But a few people since then have said to me, look, I'm a bit more hyped about that now. So it's crazy what a stare down can do. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. And I'll tell you what I did take from that, not so much as who broke the stare first, which I think was Joshua, to be honest. But I did notice a little bit more intensity in Joshua's face. When they had the stare downs before, it was laughing and joking, and there was none of that this time. And I thought, yeah, that's what we want from Joshua, because if he is going to win this fight, his attitude has to be completely different to what it was last time. I'll tell you what I found was strange as well. I remember the last fight before he fought Usyk, when they were coming out. Remember? Joshua was like hugging people in the crowd and laughing and touching gloves. And I remember thinking at the time, you know what I mean? This is a big fight you got in front of you, bro. Shouldn't you really be focused on what's in front of you? Maybe he was trying to show people that he was all relaxed and happy and all that. But I don't know, man. I suspected a bit of a lack of focus there. I'd rather see my guys, you know what I mean, with that tunnel vision focus as they go to the ring. I'm not into this tapping. I know Manny Pacquiao used to like to do that, but then that was his demeanor. Even outside the ring, he was quite jovial and stuff like that, wasn't he? But yeah, I did notice today in that face-off, that stare down, that Joshua did seem to adopt a far more intense look than he had been for their first fight, which I think, like I said, is something I would welcome, because his mindset has to be totally different this time.
I think he needs it. I think he needs to approach this differently. He needs to be more stern, and do you know what I mean? Like that, he needs to get that built in his head. And I think with Robert Garcia there, he'll help him.
Yeah. And the other thing I noticed, and I'm sure you noticed it, and I'm sure everybody who's tuning into this live will have noticed as well, is that when they come together, you realize just how big a man Joshua is to Usyk. Usyk is literally looking up at him like that, even with the hat on that Usyk had. He's looking up like that. And people have said that I've not seen him with his shirt off or anything recently, but a lot of people saying that Usyk has filled out a bit more. Since
he has. Ash is saying that as well. He did look bigger, man.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is that good for Usyk? because one of the advantages he had over AJ was his mobility, his movement. So if you're putting on weight, that suggests to me that you're going to hold your feet more. Now, is that a mistake? Or is it a sign of confidence that they think that they could stop AJ? You know what I mean? So,
I think it's
but
the
to
latter.
be honest with you, if I'm AJ, I'm thinking, yeah, man, you put on your weight. Stay there and trade with me. That's what I want. Isn't it? If you're AJ, that's what you want. Because that will give him, presumably, a better chance of winning. Because I don't think he's going to outbox Usyk.
Well, no.
I think, I mean, I know it's different fighters, so we can't draw exact parallels. But Derek Chisora, especially early on, he had a measure of success against Usyk because he was able to impose his size and strength on Usyk a little bit.
Yeah.
So maybe Usyk is bulking up a little bit because he feels that he doesn't want to give away too much weight because he might get pushed around. But at the same time, like I said, that might compromise his mobility and give AJ more of a chance. Because it doesn't always follow that just because you put on weight, it's going to increase your punching power.
Ash agrees with you here. He says here, I agree with you, Laurie. Usyk's best attributes are his feet, movement, and stamina. I don't think putting on the weight helps. Well, what about this? Both you and Ash. What about this? Usyk's been in the ring 12 rounds with Joshua already. So I'm sure he knows the threat. So with him putting on the weight, that suggests to me what you said earlier, that maybe it could be he feels he could stop him this time.
Maybe he feels he could stop him, or maybe he feels that, in the last fight, he could feel Joshua's size and power, and he doesn't want there to be too much of a disparity. A bit like, remember when Tyson Fury fought Wilder the first time? He was a lot lighter, isn't he? And he went in there the second time and he bulked up. And a lot of people said, oh, look, you're going to be more of a stationary target, etc., etc. But what actually happened was on the night is that Tyson Fury was more bigger, stronger, more powerful. But here's the clue. He was still able to retain his mobility and his nimbleness around the ring. So it didn't really affect him that much. And of course, with the extra weight, he did have a bit more power and a bit more pop on his punches. So maybe that's what Usyk's looking at. He's thinking we can sacrifice a little bit of the mobility in order to build a bit more strength and be able to, when Joshua tries to impose himself on Usyk, Usyk can push back at that, knowing that he feels a bit stronger physically.
Francisco says here, they've still got a lot of training camp left, so their weights could be much different on fight night. Yeah, they've still got about 2 months left, to be fair. Michael Maxwell says here, evening, guys. I'm late. Better late than never, bro. But he said here, I think AJ bullies Usyk in the rematch. The war and Usyk's age will come into it. Usyk's, what, 35, 36 years old now? Do you agree with that, what Michael's saying?
It's possible. But I've never seen Usyk bullied before, to be honest. Like I said, Derek Chisora did have a measure of success. He was forcing him backwards, no doubt about it, in that fight, especially early out. And that was until Derek kind of slowed down a bit and Usyk was able to establish himself and took control of the fight. I know Derek thought that he won. I don't think he did win, to be honest. No, I think Usyk won quite clearly. But nevertheless, Derek Chisora did have his moments, especially early. And even in that first fight, I know a lot of people will want to admit this or, or say this, but AJ did tag Usyk a couple of times as well. You saw Usyk's face at the end of the fight. It was quite marked up, actually. And I remember listening to an interview with Usyk after the fight, and it was being translated, and he admitted that Joshua had hurt him a couple of times. But he said he was able to regain his composure and carry on. Now, so if he's openly admitting that Joshua hurt him, and you've seen now where he's bulked up a little bit, then that suggests to me that Usyk is aware of the threat or the danger that Joshua is posing. So Usyk, funny enough, is not adopting the same mindset and mind frame as some of the people who are watching and commentating on this fight, who seem to think that AJ's got no chance at all and are just writing him off completely. Clearly, Usyk's taking this fight very seriously.
Got some more comments here. Asher said here, fight week will be immense. I can't wait for Laurie's breakdown of how AJ can win this fight. Stefan says here, Usyk stops AJ late in the rematch. And he also says, have you covered the Channel 5 stuff yet? Card of the year contender for sure. Nathan Gorman was in action last weekend. Josh Kelly was also back in the ring. Did you catch that card on the Friday? Did you watch
No, I
it?
missed it. I was out, you know what I mean? So I didn't
I'm not
see
gonna
it.
lie, I missed it as well. I'm
I
not
wouldn't
gonna
say I
lie.
would have put it in my strap season collection, though.
But what I did say before, I know Nathan Gorman won, Josh Kelly won as well. But what about Nathan Gorman quickly? What's his ceiling for you? Because I said that on the last stream last week. I did one on Thursday, and I was basically saying what you believe his ceiling could be. Can he go higher than British level for you, Nathan Gorman? Is there potential there? Because before the Dubois fight, he was being built up as someone that did have talent and ability.
Well, he was building himself up, wasn't he? I mean, the way he was going on, you'd have thought you're talking about like prime Ali, the way he was talking. Remember that stuff he was talking about Dubois? I've sparred hundreds of rounds with Dubois. I don't think I ever lost one round. And I must admit, he had a lot of people fooled.
He did.
You know what I mean? And then he gets in there and it's a completely different night. See, here we go again, you see. And he was favourite for that fight, if I remember rightly. Or at least it was a 50-50 fight in a lot of people's eyes. A lot of observers, including Tyson Fury, was saying that, yeah, he's going to do this and that. I know Tyson Fury is his cousin. And when he got in there, he got taken apart by Dubois, and he's been a slow burner since. Now it looks like he's getting a bit of confidence back, a few good wins. Listen, he's a decent fighter, no doubt about it, but I would say more domestic level. Yeah, I would say domestic level.
Can we get a British title?
I think he's capable of, on the right night against the right opponent, getting a British title. But beyond that, I'm not so sure. I don't think so, to be honest. Because once you're talking European titles, then you got your Hrgovic's out there, you got Yoka, and you know what I mean? You got other guys out there, even at English level, you know what I mean? You got Adelaide, you got people like that, Fabio Wardley, people, you know what I mean? Guys who are young and hungry and want it just as much as he does. So would he be able to beat those guys? I'm not so sure.
Well, a guy you said should retire. Guy you said should retire. Like I'm sure
you're trying to bait me now, innit? You're not talking about Dillian, surely.
I'm talking about Dillian.
Dillian's past British level, bro.
Of course, yeah. But like, if that fight came up for Nathan Gorman, would you say take it, Gorman? It wouldn't.
I think Gorman.
Fabio Wardley looks like the one that's going to happen. But I'm just saying Dillian White because you've mentioned him before.
No, but to be fair, Dillian wouldn't entertain a fight like that.
No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
So I don't even think it's worth discussing. Really.
Yeah, you're right. Actually,
I think you're looking more at the likes of Fabio Wardley, David Adelaide, and people like that. Now, could he beat those guys? I'm not so sure because both Adelaide and Wardley look, you know what I mean? They look athletic. They can both punch. They're both confident. Gorman would definitely compete with those guys, but would he beat them? I'm not so sure.
Adelaide, I think he could. Adelaide, it's that Sokolowski fight that's still not far removed from my memory. If he can give him, he beat him. Let's be real.
But to be fair to him, it came very young in his career. He's still improving. He's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. He's starting to hit harder. I mean, his performances since that Sokolowski fight have improved commensurately. So he will look at that and say, that was just a blip. That was just me on the way up. Bit like Conor Benn, our friend Conor Benn. I remember when he fought the French guy, and a lot of people thought he lost that fight. Bit like Sokolowski and Adelaide. And then since then, look what Conor Benn is now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, a couple of comments here. Michael Maxwell says, Gorman is very good at domestic level, but he has good fundamentals, but he's got poor conditioning. Nathan says here, Gorman versus Wardley would be good. Otherwise, he could fight someone like Cash Ali. I'd like to see that. I'd like to see that.
Okay, yeah. Cash Ali, I don't think he's at that level. He would be entertaining for a few rounds if he can avoid getting bitten. But listen, man, even Fabio Wardley, when he fought, who's the perennial loser that comes over here and gets knocked out?
Molina.
Yeah, when he fought Molina, I'm telling you, bro, he didn't look that good against Molina, did he? Okay, he came back and he so-called knocked him out. But Wardley was looking very unimpressive up until that point. And he looked like he got hurt in that fight as well. So if you're Nathan Gorman and you're seeing that, you're thinking, yeah, man, I could do a better job than what Molina was doing, I reckon I can take this guy. So I think that's the level that Nathan Gorman is at. Like I said, man, his confidence when he took on Dubois, he took such a shellacking. I remember that fight, man, because he talked so much smack before that fight that I was really expecting that he was going to deliver on much of what he said. But the opposite was the case. He came out there and he got trounced. He got knocked down about 4 or 5 times, was it? Or a few times, and got stopped. And he didn't land a blow. If I remember rightly, I don't think he landed a single decent punch for the whole fight while it lasted. Dubois absolutely blasted him out of there.
What about Josh Kelly? What about Josh Kelly, man? Because Ash is saying here, Channel 5 kept telling us Kelly was a future world champ. He did have the big cut. Like, it's crazy what one defeat can do. It was a real destructive defeat at the hands of David Avanesyan. But since then, I mean, Josh Kelly's almost gone off the radar a little bit, man. In terms of, like, you know, where he is in his career. And before,
I think his confidence took a real setback from that fight, man, because I think the knock on him is, and it remains until he can prove himself in a dogfight, the knock on Kelly is going to be is that he's a front runner. He's very talented, got some good skills, looks the part, but I don't like to have to say this, man, but he was slightly exposed in that Avanesyan fight. Innit? We'd heard about him before. There had been stories. I've heard Conor Benn come out in public and saying, yeah, he doesn't like it when people put it on it. Remember that? Conor Benn's come out, said that a few times. I've heard whispers, put it that way. Even from his amateur days, I'd heard whispers. Not that I'd seen that, to be honest, but I'd heard the whispers. People like Conor Benn had come out publicly and said, yeah, he doesn't like it when people put it on him. And in that fight, I've got to be honest, when Avanesyan, he did enjoy a measure of success in the first couple of rounds. But once Avanesyan coped with that and then started to turn up the energy, man, you know what I mean? It has to be said that Josh Kelly was found wanting. And he kind of quit in there, really, didn't he? And, you know, no, I'm just being honest, bro. That's how he looked. He looked like he mentally checked out. I've got to say that. He mentally checked out. So he's got a lot to prove. And even in one of those fights before that, I think when he fought
Ray Robinson in New York.
That fight.
He lost that for me.
He lost that fight, bro. He lost that fight. That was a gift. And so, yeah, there's a lot of question marks. So I didn't see the Channel 5 production. If they were calling him a future world champ, then they were really doing a selling job, weren't they? I mean, I know they got a product to sell, but they were going overboard, man. They're like that car salesman that's trying to sell you that banger and convince you that, you know what I mean, it's going to be that car that you're going to get many years out of when realistically you probably get about 6 months out of. So, yeah, that's salesman talk, man. So, no, in answer to your question, no, I don't think he's going to be because there's some killers at that division. I mean, we've talked about it on
154 now, isn't he? So,
yeah. No, but look at 154. that division is stacked also. Charlo, Sue, Castano, you know what I mean? There's all manner of fighters there. He's still got man like Liam Smith and all them man around there as well, you know what I mean? Yeah. So at domestic level, let alone, you know what I mean? PJ Metcalf and all them, man. You know what I mean?
A lot. It's a tough division, man.
Yeah, domestically and internationally. So yeah. Nah.
Even Sam Egerton would run over Kelly. Ash is saying he's in action this weekend, I think. Sam Egerton.
Yeah, I mean, Sam Egerton is one of those guys. He's a fairly young man, but he's been in a lot of hard fights over the years. But I could see a scenario that if he fought Kelly would probably win the first 4, 5, 6 rounds. But then you could see Egerton walking him down the stretch and beating him. Yeah.
What about this? Some news over the week that George Kambosos, your guy, has triggered the rematch clause officially. He's officially triggered it for the rematch with Devin Haney. So that looks like it will take place then in Australia again. George Kambosos came out and basically said that, you know, he said all the things that you're supposed to say. He said that you're going to see a different George Kambosos in the rematch.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. As we say that, Ash is saying this is the worst rematch in history. But yeah, he said that obviously he's going to make changes, make the adjustments needed to make this more competitive and win his belts back. And he's building it up as the comeback and everything else. as
He's,
you've
he's
expected him
also,
to
I don't know
do.
if you heard, but he's also said he's dropping the moniker the Emperor for this fight.
No, I didn't hear that. I didn't hear.
Yeah.
What's he
As
doing?
well he might. As well. You see, what you didn't realize, Darryl, this was part of the plan, you see. The art of war, the art of deception. It was George Kambosos.
Your thoughts on this?
Listen, you can't blame him
Yeah, you
because
can't.
I mean it was contractual, and it will happen. But I can't see him beating Devin Haney. In fact, next time around, I could see Devin Haney possibly stopping him. Because let's face it, Devin Haney won that fight easy, and he won it basically with a jab, didn't he? And the odd right hand. And I saw the fight, and contrary to what George Kambosos was said when he said that he hurt Devin Haney several times, I did not. Did you? I did not detect Devin Haney hurt not even one time. And believe it or not, Kambosos did land cleanly on a couple of occasions. And Devin would have taken that. And if he's taken that before, there's no reason why he can't take it again. He's going to be even more confident next time. And I'm hearing as well that Devin Haney and his team are going to try and push to get the fight in America. And I think if that fight does end up in America, I think that even more increases the odds of a Devin Haney win and possibly even a stoppage. Because what you got to remember with Devin Haney is he's still only 23 years old. So he's getting bigger and stronger with each fight, more confident with each fight. And like you said, he like we just said, he beat the guy comfortably already. So unless he has a real bad night at the office, I can't see anything other than him winning and winning comprehensively again. Because the reason why I say that as well, there wasn't anything that happened in that first fight to make me think that if George Kambosos tinkers and makes some adjustments, he's going to win. I mean, what did you see in that fight from Kambosos to make you think that he has a chance in a rematch? He didn't show the necessary skill set. He didn't show the necessary temperament. He didn't show just the basic skills, and he didn't have the power. So unless there's a complete 360 turnaround in the space of a few months, how is he going to beat him?
There's been some fights where I'm thinking of Shane Mosley, Vernon Forrest, where Vernon Forrest absolutely destroyed Shane Mosley in the first fight. It was more competitive in the rematch. Shane Mosley lost to Winky Wright pretty comprehensively in the first time round. Second time round gave it more of a go. I think this could be, if anything, Kambosos will give it more of a go, but the result will be the same.
He'll give it a go, but then he might prove to be more reckless than he was in the first fight, and then just walk onto stuff. Or he might say to himself, well, in the first fight, I boxed a certain way, or I was coming forward and I wasn't landing, and Devin was countering me. So why don't I try and counter him? But we know that that's not really George Kambosos' style, and he doesn't have the reach and the boxing skills for that. So I just can't see it, man. Other than him landing a punch from hell and knocking Haney out.
He's not a big puncher either, really.
And he's not a big puncher, George Cameron. Yes, he did put Teo down, but he's not a big puncher. I think Lee Selby, who fought him before the Teo fight, said that he felt that Kambosos didn't have any power at all compared to fighters who fought at that weight. So,
yeah. Let's go to some comments here. DS said here, I'd rather see Fury versus Wilder 4 than this rematch. A couple other comments I wanted to go through with you. Ian Hamilton says here, I've seen fighters with worse losses, but Kelly for me is a confidence fighter, Josh Kelly. I heard some stuff that he didn't show his face out for ages, and Ian Hamilton is actually from the Northeast. So he's around that neck of the woods where Josh Kelly's from. Might be the same, because he's from Sunderland, right? I'm sure, Ian, you used to be based up there near Sunderland area. So you'd probably know that for sure. Nathan says here, thoughts on Rabizi Ramirez. He looked good again and a great knockout. Did you catch that knockout?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I did. I mean, Robsy Ramirez is quite an interesting story because he was a guy that beat Shakur Stevenson in the Olympic final. He's a two-time gold medalist, by the way. So that's a hell of an achievement. Yeah. Right up there with Rigondo and Lomachenko and people like that. And then he turned pro, and I think he lost his first fight. Yeah, and a lot of people have said, you know what I mean, he's a typical one of those amateur guys, turned pro, different ball game, bigger gloves and this and that. But since then, man, he's racked up some impressive. I mean, he fought in England, didn't he? Not so long ago, and had a stoppage win there. Took the guy out there as well. And I was impressed because this guy that he fought, Supernova, with a ridiculous blonde beard, by the way, he was highly touted. And I watched the fight, and Ramirez basically walked through him, didn't he? He literally walked through him.
Yeah.
Took some risks, caught a few times, but didn't seem to care. He was just on a mission to just get Supernova out of there, and he did it in impressive fashion. So yeah, man, he's definitely in the shake-up.
For sure.
So I was impressed, 100%.
Big up Daniel White, my man Daniel White in the building. He says here, good evening, guys. Do you think Haney has the highest ceiling compared to the other guys at his weight? Let me just reconfirm those names at that weight. Haney, Gervonta Davis, Lomachenko's still there, but I guess you might be talking about the younger guys. So Teofimo moved up to 140. At and around the weight, then you've got the likes. So let's just say all the top guys at and around that weight. Where do you have Devin Haney? Do you see him with the highest ceiling? I think
I would agree with that. He's the youngest.
Shakur, I know he's not at that. Are we talking about at the weight? If we are, then yeah, you've got Haney, you've got Tank, you've got Ryan Garcia, you've got Loma still there. So yeah, I guess out of those guys.
Yeah, I think Shakur's the weight below, but we all know that at some point Shakur Stevenson is going to move up. So I could see him and Haney going at it at some point. But yeah, in terms of ceiling, I think he does. Because let's face it, Lomachenko is in the tail end of his career now.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
What about Gervonta Davis?
Gervonta Davis is an interesting one because you're going
to put Gervonta Davis in. You were thinking about it, putting him in that pound for pound list before Haney's win, of course.
Yeah, I would have Gervonta Davis in the pound for pound. Yeah, but I think I said to you before. He's probably the most exciting fighter in the world right now, isn't he? To watch.
One of them.
I know Beterbiev is exciting, but it's a different type of exciting. But yeah, Tank, man, he's an excellent fighter. So yeah, that division is hot right now as well. That division is hot.
You're saying Haney, you think he's got the highest ceiling?
I think he's got the highest ceiling. You got to remember, he's only 23 years old and he's an undisputed champ. And he was confident before this. Can you imagine the confidence levels he's going to have now? And he seems like he's got the right temperament and mindset to handle being an undisputed champion. You know what I mean? I think I saw a little video of him literally the day after he won the fight. He was back on the road, man, running and talking about plans for getting back in the ring and making a defense of his title. You know what I mean? There's none of this resting on his laurels and partying and all that type of stuff like some guys do. He's on it. And he seems very, very focused. And everything you hear about Haney, man, from, you know what I mean, the stuff you pick up on social media and you read, seems to be favorable, you know what I mean? He seems to be a guy that is very motivated, very dedicated, and very focused. And I think with that type of attitude as well, given the fact that he's so young, he's only going to get better, isn't he? You know what I mean? Whereas some of those other guys you mentioned, they may have already hit their ceiling. Certainly Lomachenko.
What about Ryan Garcia?
He's got a lot to prove, man. We see a lot of talk, you know what I mean? We see a lot of stuff with him hitting the bags and the pads and stuff like that. But the one thing we're not seeing is the performances in the ring, you know what I mean? And I have to say, the last fight when he fought the Ghanaian kid, I was not impressed at all. I mean, okay, he won it and he well won it. But he was talking about how he was going to blow that guy out of there in a few rounds. That guy ended up going the distance with some ease against Ryan Garcia, you know what I mean? And the guy didn't make him look good, if I'm being honest with you, man. He looked a bit of a one-trick pony in there, just the left hook and right hand.
He was very negative. Very negative, Tego was, man. Very negative in that fight.
Yeah, but they're not all going to just stand there and say, hit me and knock me out, are they? You know what I mean? I don't really blame Tego, man. I mean, him going the distance in that fight was like a win for Tego, wasn't it? Because we was all saying Ryan Garcia led the charge and he was saying 2 rounds and all that. And I'm pretty sure you didn't expect Tego to go the distance. I certainly didn't. And he went the distance quite comfortably in the end. You know what I mean? He got knocked down once. It was half knockdown, half push down. but he didn't really get hurt that much. And he kind of exposed Ryan Garcia as a bit of a one-trick pony in that fight as well. That was
I think
just
it may
relying
be.
on took swings.
I think you may have to factor in that he was out of the ring for a while. Obviously, cited mental health and the fact that he was out of the ring for a bit. His first fight back, new trainer, in Joe Goosen. Still feeling his way around the ring, I suppose. But yeah, there's potential there.
I guess you can factor in that, but I'm sure you felt like me at the end of that fight. You felt underwhelmed. You must have.
Very,
I know I did.
very.
And I just thought to myself, for a guy that does so much talking, for a guy that there's so much buzz around, I'm looking at that performance and I'm thinking, you are way off it, son. Way off it. So what I'm saying is, I know he's got talent, but I think we need to see a lot more. I mean, he's fighting Fortuna next, isn't he? A fight that he should have had well over a year ago. He pulled out for mental health reasons. In that time as well, Fortuna has been beaten by Joseph Diaz. So how much left does Fortuna got? You know what I mean? But listen, it is a decent opponent for his comebacking fight. Let's see how he goes. I wouldn't like to say yet because, like I said, there's so much hype around this guy, but he's yet to show me. I mean, even in the Luke Campbell fight, he had a good start, dodgy middle where he got dropped and looked like he could be getting stopped. And then he come back, fair enough. He landed a great body shot to get the win. But then, like I said, he's not done anything since that. And that was a while ago. That's a couple of years ago now, isn't it? So he needs to get back in the ring. He needs to fight with some regularity for me to even start saying, yeah, he's going to be this and that. He's calling that tank, which I think is ridiculous. He needs to save his career.
We'll see. We'll see what
goes in there with Tank right now. He'll get smoked, and then that will be the end of it.
Volume on Max says here, Joe Smith Jr. would beat Yarde. Beterbiev will destroy Yarde. It'll be scary. Yeah, we spoke about that earlier on, Volume on Max. Big him up. But he's saying here that Joe Smith Jr. would have beaten Yarde. And look what Beterbiev did to Joe Smith Jr. That's basically what he's saying there. And
again, hypotheticals. How do we know that Joe Smith would beat Yarde? We don't know that. Joe Smith.
Well, I would have picked him to beat Yarde.
Yeah, you can pick him, but it doesn't mean to say it's naturally going to happen. I think that would be a very competitive fight, actually. Joe Smith versus Yarde, I do. And then when you see the way that Joe Smith fought on Saturday, I'm telling you now, if he fights Yarde like that, he probably would have got beaten as well. Because we know that Yarde can punch. You know what I mean? So if he'd have fought with that reckless abandon that he fought against Beterbiev, against Yarde, he would have had problems because Yarde would have caught him, no doubt about it. And we know that Yarde can punch. So Sergey Kovalev will tell you that. So will Lyndon Arthur. You know what I mean?
Ian Hammond said here, any thoughts on Josh, before we move on to our last topic of the day, Ian Hammond says here, any thoughts on Josh Taylor's recent comments, if you have seen him? Have you seen him? I ain't seen him. What's he said about him staying?
I saw something from him saying that he's going to stay at junior welterweight to
fight Jack Catterall.
Yeah. But he's got a very difficult fight coming up against Zepeda. I think he should concentrate on that fight. In fact, I'm surprised he took on Zepeda, man, because if I'm being honest, bro, Zepeda, to me, looks a better fighter than Jack Catterall is. And I'm not taking anything away from Catterall.
Is that confirmed, that fight, then?
Well, no, that's what the talk was, that he was in negotiations to fight Zepeda. And I'm saying to you that Zepeda, at least on paper, is a better fighter than Catterall. Not that I'm trying to diminish Jack Catterall in any way. But to me, he stacks up all round as a better fighter. He's certainly a bigger puncher than Jack Catterall. So yeah, he should have just gone straight back in there with Catterall, man. I don't know why he didn't do that. He didn't opt for that fight straight away because, listen, we all saw the fight. I thought he lost, and it wasn't even that close. I thought that Catterall was a clear winner on the night. And listen, it could have been a off night. I mean, we saw Josh Taylor on the scales before the fight at the weigh-in. He looked awful, didn't he? He looked drawn. He looked pale.
This is my concern with him staying at 140.
But to be fair, he said, this is what he said, the words out of his own mouth, is that he crashed the weight. He never did it right. Normally, he doesn't look like that. I have to be honest and say that. He's normally, I know he must struggle a little bit to make the weight because he's a very big light welterweight, very tall, rangy guy. obviously it's a challenge for him to make light welter. But on that particular fight, he obviously didn't make that weight very well because he looked drawn, he looked weak and pale, and it showed on fight night, man. And I don't like to proffer up excuses for fighters, but he didn't look himself. And to be fair to Jack Catterall, he took full advantage of it. And I thought he won the fight. He was robbed. And I use the word robbed. I want to emphasize that word because he was robbed, because it was a clear win for Catterall. And I think the decent thing that Josh Taylor should have done, he could have avoided all this nonsense by just getting back in there with Catterall, saying, look.
Well, it looks like he's looking to do that now. So
yeah, well, why is it taking him this long?
Fair play. We'll see.
Yeah.
But if that is the case, then
I
fair
think
play.
If I'm Taylor, trust me, I would take the Catterall fight rather than the Zepeda fight, because number one, it looks bad anyway if you don't give Catterall the rematch, and number two, I think if you take on Zepeda, you're actually taking on a more dangerous opponent than you would have done if you're taking on Catterall, in my honest opinion.
One thing on Catterall is, it's no good him sitting around waiting either. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no good him just stopping his career, waiting around for Josh Taylor, seeing what he's going to do. I saw he was tweeting Teofimo Lopez. Them two were, it was respectful between the two. Jack Catterall was basically saying he would fight Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo was like, yeah, all right, we can sort that out. Jack Catterall was like, cool, I'll get my guys in touch and whatever. Haven't heard anything since then. But I think it's important for him to not just sit on this and, see what Josh Taylor wants to do. Just keep yourself out there as well and build.
That would be a good fight to watch. I'm not sure if that would be a good opponent for Teofimo, his first fight at light welter, to take on a strong, awkward southpaw like that. But then Teofimo's Teofimo. He probably think he could go in there and do a number on him. But for a first fight back after losing your titles to George Kambosos like that, and obviously his confidence took a real knock, as judged by the events that took place after, the sort of mental breakdown and meltdown that he's been having, and then you go and take on a guy like Catterall in your very next fight. I'm not sure if that's the wisest of matchmaking going on there, but it would be a good fight to watch.
Yeah.
But listen, man, I want to see Josh Taylor give Jack Catterall a rematch that Jack Catterall deserves on every level.
Yeah.
And I think that Josh Taylor, if he doesn't give him the rematch, he'll always be remembered for not giving Catterall the rematch. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Even his own fan base.
Despite everything he's done. Do you know what I mean? Because let's be real, man. He's before that fight, Josh Taylor, look at the guys that he fought on the way up to become undisputed. It's been a great run. Do you know what I mean? He's still undefeated, even though a lot of us thought he lost that last fight. But, the guys who he's fought, there could be no arguments as to, his resume up until that Jack Catterall fight. So it'd be a shame that could be outdone after one bad night. But yeah.
And that was another fight where before the fight, everyone I spoke to, and look, I'm not going to try and be wise after the event, myself included, I thought that Josh Taylor would win that comfortably. I was even predicting a late stoppage for that fight. I think you pretty much said the same thing. I don't know a single person that I spoke to. I saw a couple of people online saying that Catterall had a chance if this, blah, 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 putting all these caveats in front of it. But I don't think I spoke to a single person that said that Catterall was going to win the fight. And yet you saw on fight night, he more than deserved it. So we go back to the Beterbiev Yarde thing. Just as we create these guys as monsters, as beasts, as killers, and we think they're unbeatable, boxing being the type of sport it is, you know what I mean? Someone comes along and upsets the apple cart. Could that person be Anthony Yarde? Could he be that guy?
We'll see. Last one here before we go quickly. We won't talk about him for too long, but Jarrell Miller will be in action this week. His first fight after nearly 4 years out the ring. It's in Argentina at a WBA KO to Drugs festival. You can't make it up.
You couldn't make it up, could you? How ironic is that?
Fighting on that show.
That's what we call in the UK taking the piss, isn't it?
Yeah.
Jarrell Miller, one of the biggest drugs cheats in recent years, headlining a card called KO to Drugs. Isn't that ironic? Listen, man, I've said to you many times on this show before, I've got no time for the likes of Jarrell Miller. Yes, he served his ban. Yes, he's going to come back. But I've got zero interest in him as a fighter or as a person. I didn't like him before, let alone now. You know what I'm like when it comes to drug streets. I've been quite outspoken about drug streets on your show many times before. And Jarrell Miller is one of the very worst types of drug streets out there, by the way. So, yeah, man, not interested in the slightest is what I would say about that.
Can he get himself into any sort of contention?
No, not at all. He blew it, man. He blew the bag when he was going to fight AJ. He was fortunate enough to get that world title shot. It was due to his connections with Eddie Hearn. He had the bag. He fumbled the bag spectacularly. Had the fight have taken place, I've no doubt that AJ would have knocked him out cold. He probably would have put up an argument for 3 or 4 because he is quite tough. He's a big guy as well, but he wouldn't have beaten AJ. I'm pretty sure of that. But anyway, it's that's all hypothetical. And like what we do know is that he's a cheat, and he's a long time cheat as well. I think he got kicked out of K2 because he's cheating there as well. Come to boxing, cheated here. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even be surprised if in the future he's back on drugs again. You know what I mean? Once a drug street, always a drug street, man. You know what I mean? I don't think you can trust him.
Last one here before we go. Francisco says here, Danny Garcia going up to 154. Of course, yeah, he'll be fighting Jose Benavidez, who is David Benavidez' brother. All set for July the 30th. I picked Garcia, but after that, I don't see Garcia doing all that well at 154. It's a tough division. It's a very tough division. And you might have a point. I don't like to underestimate Danny Garcia because I know how good he is. And I think it's taken him a long time. He's been teasing about moving up to 154 for ages, but he's finally doing it now. Is his heart fully in the game like that anymore? He's got a lot of businesses outside of boxing. Seems to be doing well for himself, which is good.
He's a bit of a rapper now as well, isn't he?
Well, I don't think he's got real estate. I think he's got a barber shop. He's got his own thing going on. He's got a clothing line. He's doing his thing, man. But
yeah, fair play to him.
But
and listen, this fight he's got here, man. I mean,
it's a safe fight. It's a
very safe fight with a name.
Jose's moving up from 147 anyway.
Yeah, and I saw Jose Benavidez last fight, and I thought he lost. You know what I mean? He clearly lost that fight. I think he was given a draw, but he lost that fight. And he looked poor. And he's compromised because he was involved in a shooting incident a few years back, and he got shot in the leg, and that's impaired his mobility. And then Terence Crawford did an absolute number on him, and he just doesn't look the same guy, to be honest. He doesn't even have the same confidence he had before. So, yeah, I would expect Danny Garcia to get rid of him, man. 8, 9 rounds, maybe. Even if he doesn't get rid of him, I still think he'll win comfortably. And then it'll be who they put him in with from there. He'll be competitive because, Danny Garcia has got decent skills. He's experienced. And one thing about Danny Garcia that we all know, he's a tough guy. He's got very good chin, man.
Very tough.
You know what I mean? So he's not going to be an easy night for anything other than the very best at that weight. So I expect him to make some noise. If he's matched right, I mean, can you imagine him versus Liam Smith? That would be a great fight. How about that?
Yeah.
That would be a great fight, man. 2 warriors in there.
I think
I'm not sure who would win that one. I think I might lean slightly towards Danny Garcia because he's a bigger puncher, he would appear.
Yeah, I think I'd slightly.
Yeah, but that would be a very competitive fight because you know that Liam Smith is hard as nails and he's going to be in there bringing it. So, yeah.
Let's see how he looks. I'm not going too much against Jose Benavidez, but I just want to see the motivation, how much that's still there. Because like I said, he's in his 30s now. Surely he's got to be in his 30s now.
Yeah.
He's like I said, he's successful out of the ring. He's had a great career inside the ring. So let's see.
He's not that old though, is he? So I think it makes sense for him to carry on fighting. And let's be honest, he was a big welterweight. He was a massive light welterweight, by the way. I remember seeing him actually when he fought Zab Judah. I was out there in New York at the time, and I remember bumping into him. Massive guy for the weight at light welter. And then he was big for welter, not so tall, but broad and thick and strong. So you can see now him moving through the weights, and he's gone up to junior middle. And I think he'll be a strong junior middle as well. He's not the
34.
fastest, but he's very strong. Underrated boxing skills. Big right hand, big left hook. He's got that no-look left hook that he throws as well. He seems to have got that off to a tee. And like I said, he's as tough as nails with a very good chin.
34 years old, Danny
Yeah.
Garcia is now.
So yeah, he's still got a couple of years left. I'm not hating on that. He's still got a couple of years left. He's never really been beat down, has he? In fact,
Well,
he's lost.
Spence beat him down a bit.
Yeah, Spence beat him fairly comfortably, but I don't think it was a beat down as such. And certainly those other losses were disputed, weren't they? Certainly the one with Sean Porter, that was, that was close. And the Keith Thurman, he put up a good effort there. So he's only been beaten by the very best so far.
Yeah.
So I reckon he could make some noise at junior middle as long as he's match right. You know what I mean?
Mm.
I think his welterweight days are over. So I think the move up in weight makes sense, to be honest. Because there's new guns at at welterweight, younger, sharper, quicker, faster, and at those type of weights, that makes a big difference. So stepping up in weight, the guys are not going to be quite as quick. That will probably suit him.
Let's see. Big up Oaks, man. Good to have you here. But listen, we're going to wrap that up for today, man. Shout out to everybody in the chat, first of all. Don't forget on the way out, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to be trying. I'll see if I can definitely attempt to jump onto another live during the week. I'm not going to be around on Thursday, but I'll see if I can maybe do Friday evening or something. But yeah, in the meantime, everyone enjoy your week, man. Great to have you guys on the show. Laurie, can you close it out today?
Listen, man, thanks everybody for watching. Truly appreciate it, man. And thanks to you, Daryl, for allowing me the time to indulge in my passion, which is boxing, and coming on the stream. It's been great fun as always. Shout out to you, all the people out there. Like, share, subscribe, man. Let's get this guy the amount of followers he deserves. And I'm not being biased.
Big up to all you guys, man. DS, Francisco, all the rest of you lot. And we'll catch you lot very soon, man. Peace out.